What is intonation? Intonation is about how we say things rather than we say. Without intonation, it's impossible to understand expressions and thoughts that go with words. Listen to somebody speaking without paying attention to the words. The melody that you hear is intonation. And intonation has the following features. Number 1. It's divided into phrases also known as tone units. Number 2. The pitch moves up and down within a pitch range. Everybody has their own pitch range. Languages too differ in pitch range. English has particularly wide pitch range. In each tone unit, the pitch movement rise or fall, or a combination of the two, takes place on the most important syllable known as the tonic syllable. The tonic syllable is usually a high content word near the end of the unit. These patterns of pitch variation are essential to a phrase's meaning. Changing the intonation can completely change the meaning. For example, pay attention to this expression. It's raining. So, now say it again using the same words but giving a different meaning. For example, it's raining or it's raining. So, in the first one it means what a surprise, but in the second one it's kind of how annoying or that's great. There are many possibilities, but everything is about the intonation. Why it is important to teach intonation? Okay, number 1, because awareness of intonation aids communication. And number 2, because incorrect intonation can result in misunderstandings, speakers losing interest or even taking offense. So, we need that our students develop great awareness of intonation to facilitate their speaking and listening. So, the next time you do a class speaking activity, focus on your students' intonation. Are the students whose language is correct but something doesn't sound right? Do they come across as boring or insincere? It may well be their pitch range isn't varied enough. It's important to remember that in the pitch, raising and falling tones have clearly functions. For example, the fall suggests finality, yes? And the raising suggests that the person is going to continue talking. And in the case of the fall rise, is rather more special and somewhat subtler in its implied message. It indicates partial agreement. In the case of the rise-fall, conveys much stronger feelings, as if the speaker were determined to leave an impression of personal conviction. Crystal, 1987, proposed 6 functions of intonation. And we have the first one that is emotional. It's the expression of attitudinal meaning. Grammatical. Marking of grammatical contrasts. For example, between questions and statements. Number 3. Infrastructure. Marking of the distinction between what is already known and what is new. Textual. Marking of the structure of longer stretches of discourse, such as the distinctive melodic shape of the characterizes different paragraphs in a news reading. Psychological. Organization of this course into units that are more easily perceived or memorized, like their tendency to arrange telephone numbers into rhythmic chunks. And finally, indexical. Markers of personality, identity, or group of membership. For example, certain groups have distinctive ways of intoning, such as preachers, sports commentators, street vendors, etc. Here are some strategies that the British Council suggests to develop an awareness raising. The first one is provide learners with models. So don't be afraid to exaggerate it. The British Council suggests some good techniques in order to awareness intonation. The first one is models. Provide learners with models. Don't be afraid to exaggerate your intonation. The second one is let students to compare two examples of the same phrase. For example, varied flat intonation English in L1. The third one is ask the students to have a 2-minute conversation in pairs as roles. Listen that we're using a feature if necessary. For example, with no intonation. When they then go back to speaking normally, point out that the difference is made by intonation. This is what gives movement to our voices. And the last one, get students to imitate my intonation but without words, just humming. Okay, we have here the historical perspective about pronunciation, and we have in the 19th century there was no attention paid to pronunciation and primarily to mastering foreign grammar. Then in the end of the 19th century the phonetic notation was presented. That was an advance. Then, in the early 20th century, we have phonetics were incorporated into linguistics. 40s and 50s, phoneme was introduced into structural and audiolingual teaching. In the 60s, Chomsky's revolution with the birth of interlanguage. In the 70s, we have the communicative approach, prioritize the speech act, but fluency before accuracy. And finally, in the 80s, we have the natural approach, the one that emphasized to holding back on production until students felt ready. Referring about how we have to teach pronunciation, we have these two approaches. And these segments of a language are the particular and minute details of its vowels, consonants, and individual sounds. So we have segmental and suprasegmental. And for segmental, we have a clear example. It's when we work the pronunciation of D in English. And in the case of suprasegmental, we have stress, and also we have intonation. That are some factors that are part of the suprasegmental. At least consciousness rising through judicious practice of mixed segmental and suprasegmental considerations might begin to take the student down the path to his or her particular end goal. That could be its perfection or intelligibility.